Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Janice Eldridge, Associate Director of BARR Schools, and I will be your host for our webinar today on why relationships matter. I've been in education for almost 20 years and have had the privilege to work with BARR schools all over the country and here in Minnesota. We hope to provide you both a foundational research base for the importance of relationships, as well as practical tools you can use in your practice. We are so thankful for the work you are doing to serve our students and grateful you took some time today to join us. Presenting on the webinar today with me will be members of the BARR team, and we're also going to feature some schools throughout Minnesota. I would like to start off by introducing the BARR team, and a little later you'll get to meet the school leaders. First, I would like to introduce Angie Jarabek, Executive Director.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm Angie Jarabek. I've been an educator in Minnesota for almost 30 years. I'm a K-12 instrumental education instructor, as well as was a high school counselor at St. Louis Park for about 20 years prior to doing work on BARR, and I'm currently the Executive Director of the BARR Center.
Thank you, Angie. Next, I'd like to introduce Rob Metz, Deputy Director.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rob Metz. I'm the Deputy Director of BARR Center. I had a long 36-year career in Minnesota public schools, 10 years as an elementary teacher, 16 years as an elementary principal, then 6 years as a high school principal, and 4 years as a superintendent. The last 20 years of my career were served in St. Louis Park, Minnesota. I retired, and now I'm working for BARR Center. It's great to see you all this morning.
Thank you, Rob. I'm also going to turn it over to Dr. Anu Sharma. While I do that, could people please mute their mics? And Michelle, if you have control, could you please mute everyone's mics? We're getting a lot of feedback. Thank you so much. I want to introduce Dr. Anu Sharma, Senior Research Scientist.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anu Sharma. I have been a research and evaluator for about 30-plus years in Minnesota and nationally, and I've been with the BARR model since it began in 1999.
A few housekeeping items before we begin today. This webinar will be recorded and posted to the department site. Again, please keep your mic muted, but if you have questions, please pop them in the chat box. Also, Michelle, I see some items popping up in the chat box that people are having trouble hearing. I'm not sure if you're able to help them with that. Now, I would like to hand it over to Founder and Executive Director of BARR, Angie Jarabek.
Well, once again, I really want to thank everybody for being here. Appreciate everyone's patience with distance learning while we're doing this PD, as well as want to acknowledge that this is what everyone is doing in terms of kind of our work that we are now doing kind of across the country. So I think what we're finding out is that distance learning has really solidified what we already knew, that schools are not just educational places. This is a place that we build community. This is a place that we are supporting one another. And this is a place in particular where we build relationships. And I think that we are really profoundly feeling that. I think education really comes in kind of two parts. One is head and the other is heart. And what I will say is in terms of the head aspect, we're addressing that through packets. We're addressing that through Zoom. We're addressing that through a number of ways with, varying levels of success. But I think what we really need to lean into now is the heart. How can we build relationships, especially when we're not physically together? I think one of the notable contributions that the BARR Center can provide is we can be able to really show what heart does, what the relationship does in terms of achieving all those academic outcomes that we know that our kids need, but also being able to really provide those wraparound supports in terms of really developing healthy humans and in terms of having a community that really is able to establish one another. So kind of with that, I'm really excited to be able to hear from schools across our state in terms of the work that they are doing. So we are able to hear from schools that are rural and really addressing challenges head on and finding success, as well as urban, but just some incredibly talented educators that I'm confident you're going to learn a lot of strategies from as we go forward today. So with that, I'm going to actually turn this over to Dr. Anu Sharma, who I've been able to work with for the past 20 years, and she can kind of give a primer on the why. So we're going to be able to be grounded in why are we leaning into relationships, and then we'll move to how we can do that. So with that, Dr. Sharma.
Thank you, Angie. I want to add my welcome to that of Angie and Janice and all of us at the BARR Center. Again, my name is Anu. I've had the great pleasure of being the evaluator of the BARR model since its inception. In 1999, I was assigned by my supervisor the project of evaluating, quote unquote, the 9th grade program at St. Louis Park. And little did I know that in 2020, I would be here talking about 20 years of research undergirding that same model. So I just wanted to say that at this time, what I'm hearing from family, friends, and neighbors is that relationships matter more than ever. For those of us who work in schools, we've always known that to be the case. We just know and feel in our hearts that students learn better when they're learning with someone. You know, that side by side, or I'm doing this for you because you care about me feeling. But one of the criticisms that we faced for those of us who believe that is from people who think that's fluff or feel-good stuff, but not really evidence-based. But with BARR, my experience has been otherwise. When you pay attention to relationships and you use data, that same data, which of course represents students, moves. I'll give you a few highlights, just a few, because I know we want to stick with practicalities in this time together. Let me show you the science behind relationships in BARR, and then we'll move to practice. Michelle, could you move to the next slide, please?
This is Michelle. I'm so sorry. I'm working on it. It's just going really, really slow. So I apologize. That's another feature that's happening.
Maybe I'll keep going then, and because the next slide is a quote, and I could just go ahead and read it.
Yeah, we have a lot of attendees. We have,
Okay. So yeah. Here's the quote that will be on the next slide. Thank you, Michelle. The quote says that there's a growing body of research that has demonstrated the effects of socio-emotional learning on school climate, student behavior, and student academic performance. Critical to this discussion is the use of rigorous research designs that test the causal nature of this relationship. And that's what BARR has contributed to this discussion, a test of the causal nature. Now, the only way the scientific model can attribute cause or causality is through randomized controlled trials. These are studies in which there's an experimental and a control group, and students are assigned at random to one of those two. These are extremely challenging to undertake in the real world of education, especially at the secondary level, and very few have shown results. But with a foundation of relationships, BARR has done so. Michelle, when you get the slides moving, actually just let me know, and I'm just gonna, for the sake of time, not wait, if that's okay.
Yes, this is Michelle. I'm so sorry. I might try a couple of things, but everything is just really slow, even my responses to the questions in chat. So what I'm going to ask right now is that maybe people stop writing in chat. That might actually free up some of our memory here because it's just not working. So please, people just stop writing in chat for a little while, and we'll see if we can get those slides to advance. Thank you.
Sounds good. Okay. So let me just mention the world of our research, or our research at a glance. Basically, we focused on 9th grade students, but elementary and middle schools have found this to be applicable to their settings as well. We have done randomized controlled trials, 12 of them, in the states of Minnesota, California, Kentucky, and Texas. 4,723 students and 149 teachers participated in these studies. And it's worth mentioning that the vast majority, over 75% of them, were students of color, and 79% eligible for free and reduced lunch. And the students in these schools were randomly assigned for 1 year to either BARR or business as usual. The measures that we tested to see if BARR students outperformed control students were credits earned, passing courses, NWE scores, and teacher and student perceptions. We also have a number of validators that have worked on our research in one way, shape, or form. The American Institutes of Research, we've gotten awards from ACT, from the federal government, the National Registry of Effective Programs and Practices, et cetera, et cetera. So how did we have the confidence to attempt 12 randomized controlled trials? Michelle, now you've got the slides up. If you can move several slides ahead. And one more. Thank you. Yay, thank you, Michelle. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. Well, this slide shows 20 years of data from St. Louis Park. At St. Louis Park High School, where Rob Metz, who will speak next, was principal at the time and later superintendent, the program helped close the achievement or opportunity gap. So on this left slide, the dotted lines represent Minnesota state averages. The solid lines represent St. Louis Park students. And the solid blue line is always above the dotted blue line for all students. Similarly, solid red is above dotted red. Those are Black and African American students. So St. Louis Park students consistently outperform their Minnesota peers. But look where the solid blue and red lines end up. They meet in 2017, which meant that Black or African American students did just as well, in fact, a little bit better than their white counterparts. On the right, we see the number of AP and IB tests that students took at the school steadily increased over time. As I mentioned earlier, St. Louis Park received the award from ACT several years ago for this achievement. So our experience at St. Louis Park gave us the confidence to test the model elsewhere, and so we did. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to keep, yay, thank you, Michelle. We tested it at Hemet High School, which is a suburban high school in the Los Angeles, California area, and those data are on this slide. The graph on the left shows failure rates went down over time. They did so for all students and for Hispanic students. The second graph on the right shows NWEA scores, achievement test scores on reading and math. The BARR students in blue did better than the non-BARR students in green. So from Hemet High School, next slide please. We tested the model in 11 other schools. These bar graphs show that failure rates were lower for BARR students who are in dark blue than the non-BARR students, the control in light blue. And this was true for the full sample, girls, boys, minority, and white students. Next slide, please, Michelle. Okay, here's the big one. How does BARR get these significant results? So the American Institutes of Research, our external evaluator for these 12 randomized controlled trials, conducted what's called a mediation analysis. Dr. Hans Bose, our principal investigator, told us that it's rare that a theory of change is actually subjected to a test, but this one was. And guess what? The theory of change held up. Let's go through it briefly. BARR gets results by working with teachers to change their attitudes. They feel increased self-efficacy. They believe they can actually facilitate positive strength-based changes in their students. They feel supported by their administrators, and then they, in turn, change their own behaviors. We see enhanced collaboration, better use of data, and lo and behold, we see them creating positive, intentional relationships with students. As a result, student attitudes change. The students themselves feel more supported, they feel more is expected of them, and they feel more engaged in and excited about school. They, in turn, change their behaviors. They show up more, they have fewer issues, and better social emotional skills. And finally, we get academic outcomes, those prizes at the end of all this hard work. Students graduate at higher rates, they have better math and reading scores, they increase the number of credits they earn, and they pass core classes at higher rates. It starts with the teachers and it ends with the students. And now I'd like to turn this over to my colleague and friend, Rob Metz, to talk about things from a practitioner perspective.
Yes, good morning again, everybody. This is Rob. By the way, BARR stands for Building Assets, Reducing Risks, starting with the assets. And I love this chart because it really applies to the work that I've been part of in all the schools that I've worked in. This slide shows that research supports a left-to-right approach. I think of this in a simple way. When you're starting on the left, the first step in the process is building relationships with students. But relationships only get you so far. Relationships really give you an opportunity to engage the students. Once a student is engaged, now you've got them hooked. Now they care about what you think. They want to please you. Now you can expect more of them and increase the level of rigor. For example, once a student is engaged and they turn in poor work, you can hand it back to them and have them do part of it over, and they will. That's when academics improve. So it's a left to right approach. This makes complete sense, but to be honest, for most of my career, even though I believed it, I didn't act that way. If I wanted to improve math scores, I changed the math curriculum. I started on the right. That's what most of us still do, because this is how we were trained. It makes sense, and it seems simple to move from the left to the right, but I can tell you, you need a structured and well thought out plan to make that happen in your classroom or in your school. Next slide, please. In the next few slides, you will learn that it is also important to build relationship among the adults in your school. We take this a step further and intentionally network our schools together on a national level. For example, later today, I'll be leading a PLC for BARR elementary, middle school, and high school administrators from all corners of the country. We connect them, and they support and learn from each other. You can see on this slide that we are currently networking well over 100 schools in all corners of the country. This morning, we also will share a sampling of practical relationship and engagement strategies that are being used in some of our 30 Minnesota schools. Next slide, please. This slide shows the Minnesota schools that we are currently working with. With that, I am going to pass this on to my colleague, Janice Eldridge.
Thank you so much, Rob. If you could go to the next slide, please. So BARR is based on two pillars, relationships and data. Data is both the hard data, attendance, discipline, test scores, grades, but also that softer data. Has the student lost too much weight? Are they wearing the same clothes every day? Have they changed friends groups? How is their general well-being? Pictured here is Gene Roundtree, headmaster at Snowden International School in Boston. He greets students both in the morning and between class so that he can do a quick hourly check-in with kids. This is something that could be done at the classroom door or virtually through a quick message. If you could go to the next slide, please. So in order for your school culture to be healthy, there are three types of relationships that will be really important. Staff to staff, and that does include administrators, teachers, all staff in the building, staff to students, and student to student. And we're going to be discussing each of these in depth. Let's dive into the three types of relationships. Next slide, please. Many times when we think of relationships in schools, we think primarily of staff to student. And these are absolutely critical and so important to develop. And as staff members, we need to be modeling healthy relationships for our students. It is also vital that we care for our well-being so that our cup is full so that we can continue to give to our students. BARR breaks down the silos so that educators can find themselves in a supportive team. Rachel Laram, BARR coordinator at Horizon Middle School East in Moorhead, is going to share with us some of the work that they have been doing around staff-to-staff relationships amidst distance learning. Horizon Middle is in their first year of BARR. Rachel?
Good morning. My name again is Rachel Laram, and I am super excited to share some of the initiatives that we have started at our school to support our staff, because our staff is doing so much to support our students. The amount of energy and empathy, creativity, and time that our staff is putting in to make sure that our students are feeling supported and engaged and cared for is pretty phenomenal.
my daughters are, well, one's in middle school, but one's in elementary. And when they went through their counseling pieces in the elementary programs, they learned about bucket fillers and that you can't fill someone's bucket unless your bucket is filled yourself. So what we're doing at Horizon East for staff is hopefully filling some buckets to give them the energy to keep working as hard as they are. I want to make sure that I give a shout out to two of my team members, our team members, who are doing some amazing things with these initiatives that I'm going to walk through. Kim Werlinger is our counseling administrative assistant, and Danelle Clayman is our school social worker. These ladies are some powerhouses behind creativity and pushing some things through. So all of these things I'm talking about would never happen without those two. So what I want to do is just walk through some real practical ideas. So first of all, we, as a BARR school, have meetings quite regularly with our 8 teacher teams, and we call those big block meetings. So the way, since distance learning has started, we start our big block meetings on a very positive note. The first few weeks of distance learning, we had a question of the day, so each person on the call would answer usually some pretty random and humorous questions of the day to kind of start us off on a lighthearted track. We also, after about 2 weeks, spent 1 week of team meetings, or these big block meetings, at the beginning doing chair yoga, because we are sitting so much during the day. So we all spent about 5 minutes doing some great yoga stretches. Last week, we took Brady Bunch-style yearbook photos through our Google Meet screens that will be used in our yearbook next year, and it was fun to see what the staff did and some of the faces that the staff made in those. Another idea that we have generated at Horizon East was the idea of a distance learning newsletter. We call ours the Spudemic newsletter because our mascot is a potato. Each week we have something different featured in this newsletter, but the regular pieces would include informational articles or an inspirational article. We always have a song of the week. It could be a parody or it could be an uplifting song. We have clever memes, we highlight staff birthdays, we have started planning some activities. Let's say we did a virtual learning bingo and then offered a prize. We've done outdoor scavenger hunts. This week, as you can kind of see on the slide, we are encouraging our staff members to submit photos, recreating important pieces of art, and those I'm very excited to see what our staff members submit for those. We have started a staff cookbook and asked for submissions for that so that those of all of us who are home on the stay-at-home order can maybe start some new creative recipes. And most importantly, at the very end of this newsletter, we have a link for staff members to reach out confidentially if they need support. And then as a trained counselor and then our school social worker, we're able to help our staff, if they reach out, connect to the right supports in the community. Another really exciting idea that has come to fruition is our Corona coffee break. So every Wednesday morning for about a half an hour, whoever wants to join us will have a half an hour together of mostly laughter and conversation. This week, our conversation ended up gearing towards embarrassing moments in the classroom. We featured our pets on the call this week. It's just really laid back, a really good way to stay connected and to laugh a little bit. At the end of this Corona coffee break, we draw 2 names, and then those 2 people will get coffee or the morning beverage of their choice delivered to their front doorstep, and I think that's been a really fun addition. The last practical idea that we had come up with, it was a brainchild really of our administrator who at our meetings last week was feeling a lot of fatigue from staff, very understandable. We have all been working so hard trying to connect with students. He could feel that energy in the room, so he proposed us a pause on these meetings so that this week we could play Kahoot in each of our 8 team meetings. So we called it the All-Star Break. I called it a brain break, but each staff member answered a survey And the questions were really geared to be A, funny, and B, getting to know each other a little better. And we played Kahoot in each of these 8 meetings. And the Kahoot games were very geared towards that small number of teachers, so it was really personal and a lot of fun. So thinking ahead, one idea that we are hoping to move forward on would be the idea of postcards. So we at Horizon East are sending postcards to students that we miss, or students that are really doing a great job right now with distance learning. So now we're thinking it's time to send some positive note cards to our staff as well, because who doesn't love getting mail? So those are just some ideas that I wanted to share with how we're trying to keep our staff connected and engaged.
Thank you so much, Rachel. So as you can see, our BARR teams involve administrators, teachers, counselors, special ed coordinators, really a variety of staff in the building, and they're all working together to engage and build relationships with each other and build relationships with students. If you'll go to the next slide, please, Michelle. So we also wanted to share some examples with you from across the country, as well as examples from Minnesota. And so we have quite a few schools right in the heart of New York City who have been, about 10% of their student population has been directly affected by COVID-19. And one of the things staff at those schools are doing is really using a leveling system that we created for students. And that leveling system involves leveling students from 0 to 3 at these teacher meetings that we're having weekly. And a 0 is an indication that a student is thriving. A 3 is an indication that they need both school and community resources. The staff had the idea to take that leveling system and apply it to themselves on a weekly basis, so that they knew where each other stood, they knew who was struggling, and that they knew who was thriving that week. And that way they can adequately support each other through this really tough time, especially some places in our country like New York City that have been especially hard hit. If you can go to the next slide, please. The next relationships that we wanted to talk about were staff to students. Staff to student relationships must be intentional. Each student that comes through our doors of our school must have a connection with at least one adult in the building. The beauty of a team is that as long as you don't connect with every student, that's okay. Because as long as someone on the team is connecting with the student, then we know that that student has that really vital connection with an adult in our building. We have 2 educators from McGregor High School in McGregor, Jared Fisher, English teacher, and Cheryl Meld, 21st Century Learning Center coordinator. They're in their 4th year of BARR, and they're going to talk to us today about staff-to-student relationships. Jared and Cheryl?
Good morning. I'm Cheryl Meld from the McGregor School District in northern Minnesota. Our rural pre-K through 12 school serves just under 500 students spread across 900 miles. So my role in the district is coordinating a number of student support services during the school day and after school, including BARR and those funded by our 21st Century Community Learning Center grant. And I'm here today with Jared.
Yes, my name is Jared Fisher. I teach English at McGregor High School and I'm also a BARR advisor. The central tool that we use for establishing and maintaining staff-to-student relationships during distance learning is our team block meetings. This collaboration gives us a plan and specific tools for connecting with students. The focus throughout the meeting is on a plan for improvement with specific interventions and contacts, not just documenting the situation. We use whatever angle we can to connect with students. We like to utilize staff members who already have a good connection with that student in the communication process. We also rely on family information, cultural connections, as well as students' interests and hobbies. Our coordinator follows up and sends out a summary and a plan for each student. We communicate with students through phone calls, emails, our LMS, and Google Meet video chats. Something that has helped us track this information is a shared call log. Our call log is a simple Google form to document contact with students. The form includes the teacher's name, student's name, contact date, and notes about the contact. This system allows us to efficiently track contact with students and families. One of the biggest components of our distance learning plan is the delivery of meals and content packets to students. Meals and packets are being delivered by bus, and our cafeteria has become home base for our distance learning system. Cafeteria staff and paraprofessionals have become leaders as they are organizing meals and content packets to go home. They take pride in the process and know what their students need. The interaction between paras and students during this time has been very important and beneficial to all involved. Now I will hand it back to Cheryl for more information about our district's process.
Okay, thanks. We serve many families, many students whose families have multi-generational connections to our community, and we're able to use our personal knowledge of families to provide real strength-based and wraparound approaches to problem solving and support. And our collaborations between school and community resources have been real vital. Some examples of this related to distance learning include providing internet connectivity to isolated students. Our district was able to loan out its supply of hotspots, and then a community club and a tribal agency stepped up and provided several more, and now nearly all of our students have internet connectivity. Another example of our collaborations involves mental health of students. During the school year, we have a variety of partner agencies supporting our counselor to meet the mental health needs of individual students and smaller student groups. As we transition to distance learning, we worked with families to arrange some level of continued mental health support, and we have surveyed students to see how they are doing coping with stresses associated with our distance learning. Many students report anxiety over increased responsibilities at home along with their schoolwork, and now we're able to provide helpful resources in response to their concerns. Finally, about 25% of our students are Native American, and we have worked with our district American Indian Parent Committee and individual families to address equity in our distance learning time, while still being sensitive to the intricacies of contemporary family life and historic educational trauma. Through student and parent input and resources offered by both MDE and tribal agencies, we're able to fill some of the gaps in communication with families and better address their educational needs, communication and collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jared and Cheryl. Michelle, if you'll go to the next slide, please. Next, I want to introduce Katie Papungatoa. She is the BARR Coordinator and Intervention Specialist at Stillwater Area High School. Stillwater is in its third year of BARR. Katie? Katie, you might be muted. I can't hear you.
All right. Good morning. My name is Katie Papungatoa, and I work with Stillwater Area High School. We have over 2,800 students in grades 9 through 12. We have 8 counselors, 4 assistant principals, and 1 principal, and over 150 amazing educators and support staff. So our focus, or my focus, is to talk about how we at Stillwater Area High School create and utilize the student-to-teacher relationship in improving engagement and learning. What we have found out is our teachers have asked, what do we do when we notice that there's a pattern of disengagement with a student and it's impacting the student's learning, and the student is not responding to the teacher's communications home? So our first question is, what do we know about the student? At Stillwater Area High School, we strive to understand the whole child, and this is accomplished through collaboration. Collaboration is one component of the BARR program, as is the intentional efforts of relationship building and social emotional learning. So back to our question, what do we know about the student? So the first thing we do is we ask the teachers to look to see, does the student have an IEP or a 504 case manager? Do they receive ELL support services? If so, we ask the teachers to connect with these support systems to gain insight into who is the student and what interventions might be successful with the student they are working with. If there is no support system in place for a student, then we ask the teachers. This would be the time to reach out to the other teachers the student has to try and understand the story of who the student is, to determine the best types of intervention that would be most beneficial for moving the student forward. When you meet with other teachers or email and talk to other teachers, if you find out the student is only struggling in your class, then this is an opportunity for you to ask the other teachers what have they learned about the student and what interventions or strategies are they using that are successful. However, if you find out the student is struggling in many classes, you could find out which person on the team has the best relationship or positive relationship with the student and make a call as a team. Imagine how many phone calls some of our parents are getting when their student or their child has disengaged. Some of them are feeling overwhelmed with the amount of communication. So I asked the team to choose one member to call home, offering encouragement and support, and if possible, trying to determine what is the root cause of the student's disengagement. And then as a team, design an intervention plan together to work for the student. However, if the team or teacher efforts have not been successful, then it's time that we reach out to a counselor and administrator and share what we've learned about the student and what interventions we have tried. And if with the support of the counselor and admin, the student still continues to struggle and disengage, we ask that the student be referred to our student support team. Our student support team consists of our mental and chemical health specialists, our school psychologists, our school counselor, our school administrators, our academic interventionists, and our school nurse. As a larger team, we are able to utilize what we have learned about a student from the intentional relationships that the teachers have developed. We use what has been shared with us in an attempt to identify the root cause of the student's struggle and to determine the necessary resources to support the student and family. We then discuss and design interventions that are meant to help the teacher as they continue to develop the relationship with the student, hopefully leading to an improvement in student engagement and learning. This is how we utilize student to teacher relationships at Stillwater Area High School to hopefully improve student engagement and learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. A few more ideas from around the country, if you want to go to the next slide. The BARR program does provide unlimited coaching that comes with the model, and that's how all of these schools are able to come up with all of these great ideas and have the support to really do these ideas. New Mission High School in Boston felt like they needed a weekly forum during this time to be able to connect with all of their students. So they're having a virtual weekly town hall led by their administrators. They discuss both more serious and lighter topics. They even leave a 30-second session at the end for the kids to yell it out. At Inwood High School, again in New York City, the PE teachers found that the anxiety level was very high among students and parents. So they're having 4 times daily meditation classes that are open to both students and their parents to do together. All 4 sessions are full every day. At Edward M. Kennedy in Boston, they're doing check-ins on every assignment that have both an SEL component and an academic component. That way they're able to check in on kids' well-being as well as their academic success. And in Eisenhower High School in California, they're sending kids musical thank you for raising the bar emails when they complete assignments, just to create that positive connection. And even just this morning, I was speaking to the principal, Carrie Sweetering of Peter Hobart Elementary School there in Minnesota, who was sharing with me that teachers are opening up Zoom classrooms for elementary students just to have virtual play dates, because the parents have requested that there be that time. So the teacher can just sit and be grading work and not necessarily teaching, but the kids are having play dates, playing Uno, and parents are able to engage in the background. If you can go to the next slide, please. Finally, we want to discuss student-to-student relationships. These are the third facet of relationships in the BARR model. As school and classroom leaders, we can help students to understand the importance of these relationships, how to form and nurture them through social emotional lessons and by the example that we set. Next slide, please. At Hedgesville High School in West Virginia, they have a number of students who are excelling at online learning. They've asked these students to virtually tutor other students who may be struggling. At Inwood High School, they have both a dance party and a trivia every night, just to get kids together to have fun with each other. At Esperanza High School in New York City, they have a Friday, which is similar to what the elementary schools are doing, which is just a virtual hangout where kids can come together and just spend time together. They're also using Padlet as a social media medium so that kids can communicate on an account that can be monitored by the staff. And finally, in South Fort Myers, Florida, where they have a large immigrant population and they have about 1,800 students, the first week of distance learning, they were unable to engage about 350 of those 1,800 students. By the second week, they were down to 125 that they could not engage. And by the third week, there were only 2 students that they were unable to engage. One of the main ways that they did this was through the relationships that they had already built with students. So they reached out to students that were engaging and said, hey, we can't find this kid. And students would call the kid because maybe they had a burner phone or a track phone. A lot of students had gone back to Puerto Rico, gone to Guatemala. And students called other students and said, hey, the teacher is looking for you. They're worried about you. Can you call in so they know you're okay? And we're able to engage all but 2 students as of last week. One of the strongest tools for building relationships from students to students is participating in I-Times together. I-Times are BARR's social emotional curriculum. These are taught on a weekly basis by content teachers. Today, as our gift to you, we would like to give you a free I-Time to try out in your virtual classroom. You would go to the next slide, please. This I-Time is called Rainbow in the Clouds, and it's a crowd favorite. Students listen to a short video by Maya Angelou, and then they create a rainbow on any medium. You can see we have chalk rainbows, sticky rainbows. We've had kids create really cool computer rainbows. And on the rainbow, they will write how they will be a rainbow in someone else's clouds. At this point, we would love to take a few questions from the audience. Hannah, do we have any questions?
Hi there. Yeah, we have one right away, and it is always a question that we get is how are we different than PBIS? There's a few schools on here who are starting PBIS or are PBIS school and would like to know how BARR is different or how BARR can support.
Janice, I'll go first if you want to kind of come in second, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So I think it's a notable complement. Many of our schools are using PBIS. One of the kind of notable differentiators, as you're hearing, is we really are brokering relationships in all these facets, staff to staff, staff to student, student to student, and subsequently we are working with all of the students. So in terms of making sure that everybody's engaged and really focused on building strengths, and so it's really ensuring that students are thriving, kind of back to Dr. Sharma's earlier slides, that we're looking at accelerating students into AT and IB courses, as well as trying to address kids that have issues. But they're very complementary systems, and many of our schools are using PBIS also.
Yeah, the great thing about BARR is that it really comes in and provides a systemic approach to all of the things that you're doing in your school. And it's able to tie all of those things together under one umbrella. And we work really well with a lot of different programs. So we love to hear that you're already doing these wonderful things like PBS. What a great program. And it pairs really well together. And so we didn't, of course, have time today to get into all the intricacies of our model, but I will just tell you quickly, because I've seen a lot of things pop up in the chat, that we do also have 8 strategies that we work towards. One is to engage administrators. One is to engage families. And we provide unlimited coaching. Right now it's virtual. Usually we do some in person also. But we really coach you to all of these 8 strategies, and so that all of these strategies are working together to make sure that you're able to do all of these things. And when you hear the teachers here from Minnesota talk about the work that they've done, that's how all of that work is able to come together, because administrators are joining with teachers, or joining with counselors, or joining with family, or joining with students, and together they're able to create this systemic approach to education, which is really powerful. And so it would fit perfectly with PBIS. We're both very strength-based systems. However, PBIS is more of a positive-based intervention system. This is more of a systemic approach to how you can serve all students and how you can work together as a team to do that.
Thank you. Another question out there is, how do you engage parents and guardians in your relationship building?
I'll go a bit now, but I also can share on Monday when we give the session, we're having an entire aspect on that. So one of our components is, Janice referenced, is about family engagement. We're really intentional in the way that we frame that. So we believe engaging a family is really important, and in particular, a critical partner right now is families have always been partners in schools with distance learning. That's a really critical component. So we have many aspects of how we do that, and we're going to be highlighting it on a Monday. So the schools that are coming on a Monday are going to be really focusing on how they are successfully engaging families right now.
All right, we have one more, and then if others have questions, feel free to put it in the Q&A. But the next question is how do you know that a relationship is working with a student? How can you really tell?
I think that's a great question, and I like to think of our relationships with students like a puzzle. And I may very clearly see one aspect of a student, and I, might be really focused on that one aspect. However, when I get together with my team, which again involves administrators, counselors, social workers, special ed, paraprofessionals, PE teachers, all of us are getting together and we're sitting around the table. And I think of it as a puzzle. We're all bringing our pieces and our knowledge of that student. And if we don't have all the pieces of the puzzle, you never get to see the picture. If there's a piece missing, you always are looking at the puzzle going, what is that missing piece? But if we're all sitting together using our great wisdom and our great educational brains, we can create this beautiful picture of what that student looks like. And, I might say, hey, Angie's not doing anything in my class. And Rob might say, well, that's really funny. Angie does so well in my class. She helps others, and it will really help me to open up my perspective and to learn something new about Angie. I don't know that one person can ever say, I understand the full relationship with this person. I do think that the wisdom of group can understand what the whole student is, and that we can put that puzzle together if we work as a team. And just as a clarification, our session on Monday will be different. We're still focusing on relationships. However, we are going to focus on the family aspect of relationships and how you can, so the virtual wall, as we all know, it's really hard to continue to build relationships through this virtual wall, right? And so we're going to talk about how you can continue to push your energy through that wall and continue to build relationships with students even as we are virtual.
Yep, I would come a little bit more on this, but I also would, feel free to have any of the schools weigh in. But in terms of the relationship piece, we use traditional measures. So I want to be clear, we have a survey. So in particular, always getting student voice to be able to say how are they feeling connected is a critical component. But I think that this idea of being aware of kind of the overall impact of that collaboration. And then I think going back to our earlier slides, what we were able to discern is if in fact the student is in relationship, we know that they are thriving in a very different way. So I think that that's also been a really critical piece. So I don't know if others want to weigh in, or Hannah, if there's any other questions.
This is Cheryl, and I'd like to weigh in on that.
Great.
One of the ways that we are able to tell if a relationship is working is when the student shows up at your classroom when they're not expected there, or when they're not scheduled to be there, that they're showing up because they're seeking out some time with you.
Great. Perfect.
That is all the questions we had. So then I'll let you turn it back to slides and then our video.
All right, we would like to show you a short video put together by the ESL teacher at South Fort Myers of her class's Virtual Rainbows.
An American song, 19th century, which is so great. It says, when it looked like the sun wasn't gonna shine anymore, God put a rainbow in the clouds. Imagine. And I've had so many rainbows in my clouds. I had a lot of clouds. But I have had so many rainbows. And one of the things I do when I step up on a stage, when I stand up to translate, when I go to teach my classes, when I go to direct a movie, I bring everyone who has ever been kind to me with me. Black, white, Asian, Spanish-speaking, Native American, gay, straight, everybody. I say, come with me. I'm going on the stage. Come with me. I need you now. Long dead, you see? So I don't ever feel I have no help. I've had rainbows in my clouds. And the thing to do, it seems to me, is to prepare yourself so that you can be a rainbow in somebody else's cloud. Somebody who may not look like you, may not call God the same name you call God, if they call God at all. You see? And may not eat the same dishes prepared the way you do, may not dance your dances, or speak your language, but be a blessing to somebody. That's what I think.
Thank you so much, Michelle. So we are so thrilled that you were able to join us today. I'm really thrilled that you have a lot more questions about BARR. Unfortunately, we were not able to answer them all today in this short webinar. We are going to send you out a one-pager about BARR, as well as this free iTime. We would love to do a personalized webinar for you if you're interested to give you even more information. We'd love to answer any of your questions and hope that we can continue to be of service for you. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.